She swept in slow arcs, the bristles dragging dust from the warped porch planks. Her belly shifted with each motion, heavy but steady, as though her body had long since accepted the weight it carried. She was thinking of nothing more than clearing the porch when the sound came. Boots crunching gravel, sharp, certain, a sound that didn't belong to a neighbor or a passer-by. She froze, broom halfway through the swing. Then a voice, low and rough, called her name. Not the name she used here, not the married one, the old one, the one she had buried along with everything that had come before. Her fingers tightened around the broomstick. She turned slow, heart thudding hard against her ribs. The man stood at the edge of the yard, tall, lean, shoulders carrying dust and travel, a gun on his hip, but no hand resting on it. His eyes met hers without a smile. "You're not safe here," he said. Just that. No greeting, no reason. The words landed heavy, heavier than any threat. She said nothing. Silence stretched between them until it felt like another body standing on the porch with her. Her hand trembled against the broom. She wanted to keep sweeping, to pretend he wasn't there, but the handle slipped slightly and scraped wood instead of dirt. He stepped forward, one pace. The sound of boots hit harder than words. She swallowed, voice catching before it came. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you." The answer cut quick, almost casual, but his eyes never left hers. She tried to steady her breath. She wanted to ask how he found her, how he knew her name when no one else here did, but her throat closed around the words. The broom slid from her grip, landing with a hollow thud against the porch rail. Dust swirled up, thin and dry, hanging in the air between them. He watched it settle like he had all the time in the world. "What do you want?" she asked finally. He shook his head. "Not what. Who?" Her chest tightened. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." The silence returned, sharper now, pressing against the porch walls. She stepped back 1 inch, close enough that her hand touched the doorframe. His eyes flicked down to her Bessie, then back up to her face. No question in them, just knowledge. "You're wrong," she said quickly, too quickly. He tilted his head, voice flat. "Am I?" The baby moved inside her, a sudden shift that made her wince. She pressed a hand to her side, steadying herself. He didn't move, didn't offer anything, just stood there like a figure carved into the dirt. "You should leave," she whispered. "I will, when you listen. I don't need—" "You do." He cut her off. "Men are coming, not the kind you can sweep away with dust and silence." Her jaw clenched. She pushed against the doorframe, body caught between stepping inside and standing her ground. "I don't believe you." He stepped onto the first porch step, slow and sure. His voice stayed low. "You don't have to, but they'll believe you're mine, and they'll use that. You know what that means." She flinched. The words brought back the old name, the old ties, the ones she had broken but never erased. She hated how he spoke it like truth when she had spent years burying it. "You should have stayed gone," she said. "I tried." The answer came simple, no weight behind it. But she knew lies when she heard them. He hadn't tried. He had chosen this. Chosen to find her. Chosen to speak her name where no one else should hear it. Her voice sharpened. "I don't need saving." He stared. "Didn't say you did." "Then why?" "Because they're close. Because silence won't keep you safe." Her breath shook. She looked past him, to the dirt road, the fence line, the empty horizon. Nothing moved, but the air felt heavy, as though someone else was watching. She pressed her hand harder against her belly. "You don't know what you're asking." He gave the smallest nod. "I do." Her throat burned with anger. "You always did, and you never cared." "I care now." The words startled her, stripped bare of sharpness. She hated the way they sank into her chest. She stepped back again, her shoulder brushing the door. "Leave," she said, steady this time. He held her eyes. "Not yet." They stood locked like that until the sound of wind rattled loose boards above them. She blinked first, breaking the line between them. The broom lay on its side, half in shadow, half in dust. She reached for it, needing something in her hand, something that belonged to her and not to him. When her fingers wrapped around the handle, he spoke again. "You can hate me all you want. Won't change what's coming." She lifted the broom, bristles dragging again across the wood. "Then let it come," she muttered. He stepped onto the porch, boots landing heavy. She froze. He didn't reach for her, didn't touch her, just stood close enough for her to smell the sweat, the leather, the long road on him. "You hear me," he said quietly. "I hear nothing. You always heard everything." The words landed soft, but they burned. She wanted to strike him, to shove him back into the dirt. Instead she swept, strokes sharp and fast, wood rattling under each push. He stayed silent, watched. Then after a moment, he stepped back down to the yard. The distance returned, though it felt thinner now, stretched tight. Her breathing steadied only when he turned his head toward the horizon. He said nothing more, not a warning, not a farewell, just silence. And then the sound of boots crunching away, slow, certain, until they faded. She stood gripping the broom, arms aching. Her chest heaved with breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The dust on the porch was gone, swept clean. But the silence he left behind clung heavier than the dirt ever had. She whispered to herself, voice low and shaking, "He shouldn't know my name." But he did, and the ground felt colder for it. He didn't knock, didn't clear his throat. He just pushed the door open and stepped inside like he had always belonged to the house. She stood near the sink, stiff-backed, her hand tightening around the rag she held. He sat at the table without asking, his boots scraping the floorboards, his gun belt resting heavy against the chair. She didn't offer food. She didn't set a plate. She didn't even glance at the pot simmering low on the stove. He leaned back, folding his arms, watching her like every move meant something. She moved slower than before, careful, measured, as though each step across the room might give something away. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you." Her jaw tightened. "I live here. Livin' ain't the same as safe." She turned her back, poured water into a tin cup, then poured it out again without drinking. Her voice came sharper. "You think you know this place? I know enough. Then you know men come here all the time. They're coming different this time." She spun to face him, eyes narrowed. Men always come. He didn't flinch, just leaned forward, resting both elbows on the table. The empty chair beside him stood untouched, pulled out slightly from its place like someone had left it years ago and never returned. She felt the weight of it pressing into the room more than his gun or his words. "You don't scare me," she said. "Good. You'll need that." She gripped the edge of the counter. "You sit there like you know me." "I do." "You knew her," she snapped. "That's not me anymore." His gaze flicked down to her belly, then back up. His voice dropped low. "It doesn't change a thing." Her throat tightened. She shook her head. "You think saying that means something?" It doesn't. It means more than silence. The rag in her hand twisted tight. She dropped it on the counter, walked to the table and stood across from him. The chair opposite his was empty, too, but she didn't sit. She stared at him, waiting. "Say it plain," she said. "Men are coming," he repeated. "Not tomorrow, sooner. Sheriff's boys. Hired hands. You'll hear them before you see them." She scoffed. "I've heard Boots before. They don't stop at Boots." She crossed her arms. "And you think you'll stop them?" He shrugged. "I think I'll try." She leaned closer. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes moved again to that empty chair beside him. For a moment his face softened. Then it hardened again. "Because I know what happens if I don't." Her hands clenched tighter across her arms. She hated the way his words crawled under her skin, hated how the silence in the house seemed to stretch between every breath. "You brought this," she said coldly. "They were coming either way. Because of you." He shook his head slowly. "Because of them." Her breath caught. She pulled back, pacing a few steps before stopping at the stove. She stirred the pot without meaning to, the spoon clanging against metal. The smell of stew filled the air. But neither of them wanted it. "You should go," she said. "Not leaving. You think you're owed something. I think you'll see I'm not lying." She slammed the spoon down. "You don't get to sit there and act like you know what I'll see." "I know enough already." The words hung sharp. She grabbed a bowl, set it on the counter, then left it empty. Her hands shook, but she kept her voice flat. "You always think you know." "Not always. You left." "I had to." "You wanted to." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a flicker his silence said more than anything else. She felt her chest tighten, but she didn't let it show. She turned her face away. The chair beside him creaked in the draft, empty and waiting. Neither of them moved it. Neither of them touched it. The space it filled was louder than their voices. She spoke softer now, but no less sharp. "That chair doesn't belong to you." "I never said it did. It doesn't belong to me either." He nodded once. "That's the truth." Her eyes stung, but she blinked hard, forcing them clear. "So you come in, sit, warn me like it matters. Then what?" "Then we wait." She laughed once, bitter and short. "Wait for men to come. Wait to see what you'll do." She stepped closer to the table, both hands on the wood, leaning over it. "What makes you think I'll do anything with you still breathing in my house?" He leaned forward, too, close enough that his voice dropped into a whisper. "Because you haven't thrown me out yet." Her breath caught again. She hated the truth of it. She wanted to scream, to push him out the door, to slam it and bolt it shut. Instead she stayed, palms pressed to the table, staring into the face of the man who had no right to sit there. The stew simmered louder, steam rising, filling the air with a warmth that felt wrong. She didn't move to serve it. He didn't ask. The table stood between them like a wall neither could cross. The empty chair sat like a shadow, daring them both to acknowledge it. The silence thickened until the walls themselves seemed to strain. She whispered finally, voice low, rough. "You're not staying here." He didn't blink. "I already am." The knock came sharp, splitting the quiet of the night. She froze in the middle of the room, rag half wrung in her hands. The outlaw lifted his head from the chair, eyes narrowing. The knock came again, slower this time, heavy enough to rattle the frame. She moved first, setting the rag down, smoothing her apron with trembling hands before pulling the door open. The sheriff stood there, tall, wide in the shoulders, face carved with lines that didn't soften in the lamplight. His Bible was tucked under one arm, a folded paper in his hand. He didn't greet her. His eyes slid past her shoulder, straight to the outlaw seated at the table. "Evening," she said quietly. He nodded once. "Evening." His gaze didn't shift from the man inside. She swallowed. "You're out late." "So are you." Her lips pressed tight. She stepped back half an inch, enough for him to see the outlaw clearly. The sheriff raised the paper, let it snap between his fingers. "You know what this is?" he asked. She shook her head. "Warrant." He said it like the word carried weight heavier than the gun at his side. He held it toward her, then pulled it back before she could reach. His eyes flicked once to her belly, then back to her face. "Harbor him. You hang with him." Her breath caught. She gripped the doorframe, wood rough beneath her fingers. She didn't answer. The sheriff's eyes searched hers, waiting for something, but she gave nothing. Behind her, the outlaw spoke at last. "Evening, Sheriff." The sheriff's jaw clenched. "You've got no right to be here." "Maybe, not maybe." Silence stretched. The outlaw leaned back in his chair, hands loose on the table. He didn't reach for his gun, didn't move, just watched. "You're making it hard," the sheriff said, voice low. "I didn't ask easy." The woman shifted, her hand brushing her belly. "He hasn't," she began, but stopped when the sheriff's eyes cut to hers, sharp as knives. "Don't," he said flatly. "Don't make excuses. You know what's written. Harbor him. You hang with him. Doesn't matter what he means to you." Her face burned. She opened her mouth, closed it, then steadied her breath. She let the silence speak for her. The sheriff unfolded the paper slow, laid it against the doorframe as though pinning it to her house without nails. "I'll be back," he said. "Don't make me come with rope." Her chest tightened. She stared at the paper, the words scrawled dark across it, the sheriff's seal stamped at the bottom. She didn't reach for it, didn't tear it, just stared. "You'll have to," the outlaw said, voice even. The sheriff's head turned slow, eyes narrowing. "You always wanted to end this on your terms. Maybe tonight's the night." "Maybe." The sheriff shifted his Bible under his arm, stepped back off the porch. "Think about her," he said finally, eyes flicking once more to her belly. "Think hard." Then he turned, boots crunching in the dirt, fading into the night. The door creaked shut behind him, leaving the house darker than before. She stood frozen, staring at the paper against the wood. Her hands itched to rip it down, to tear it into shreds, but her legs wouldn't move. The outlaw rose from the chair, slow, stepped over to her. He plucked the paper free, held it between his fingers. "Don't carry his words," he said softly. She shook her head. "You don't get it. This house can't hold both of you." "It already does." Her voice cracked. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." She ripped the paper from his hand, crumpled it tight. "It doesn't take long to hang a body." He didn't flinch. "Not mine." She glared at him, the crumpled paper shaking in her fist. The stove hissed softly behind them, flames low but steady. She walked to it, opened the iron door, and shoved the paper inside. The edges caught, curling black, smoke rising fast. The outlaw watched. His eyes stayed fixed on the fire until the words were nothing but ash. She closed the door hard, metal clanging. "Now there's no proof," she whispered. "There's always proof." She turned, her breath ragged. "Then why stay? Why sit in that chair like you belong?" "Because I do." Her anger flared. "You left once. You don't get to claim belonging now." His eyes softened for just a flicker. "I didn't leave this." Her chest rose sharp with each breath. She wanted to argue, to shove him out into the dark, but her strength drained with the words. She leaned against the wall, hand pressed hard against her belly. "They'll be back," she said finally. He nodded. "I know. And when they come, then we'll see." The silence settled again, heavier now, broken only by the faint crackle of the stove. She stared at him, at the chair he had claimed, at the space he refused to leave. The outlaw leaned against the wall, arms crossed, as though the visit had changed nothing, but she knew it had. The sheriff's words lingered in the house, burned into the walls, even as the paper turned to ash. She whispered to herself, voice barely audible, "Harbor him, you hang with him." The outlaw's eyes flicked to hers, sharp but not cruel. "Then hang," he said quietly, "but don't bend." Her heart stumbled at the words. She turned away, pressing her hand harder against the wall, as though the wood could steady her. The fire hissed again, swallowing the last of the paper. The night stretched long around them, silent except for breath and flame. The barn door groaned when she pushed it open, hinges straining like they hadn't been oiled in years. The smell of hay and dust rolled out, heavy, mixed with the faint iron scent of old tools. She stepped inside without looking back. Her breath came sharp as she lifted a rake and dragged it across the floor, pulling straw into a corner. Her belly made the work slow, but she didn't stop. He followed her in, boots crunching against gravel scattered over wood. He didn't ask if he could come. He didn't offer to help. He just leaned against the post near the door, arms folded, watching her. "You don't need to be here," she said, not turning. "I said the same to you." She drove the rake harder into the hay, the sound of straw scratching louder than her voice. The barn was wide but dim, lantern light barely cutting through the rafters. His eyes roamed across beams, over rusted chains hanging from hooks, across tools, lined neat but worn. Then he saw it, a crate nailed shut against the far wall. Boards tight, edges darkened with time. It sat separate, pushed away from everything else, as if it didn't belong yet demanded space. He tilted his head. "What's in there?" Her hands kept moving, pulling hay into piles. She didn't look at him. "Things not yours." He pushed off the post, walked closer. His boots thudded against planks. "Not yours either." The rake stopped. Her shoulders tensed, then eased again as she bent to scoop hay into a basket. "Doesn't matter whose, it stays shut." He crouched near the crate, running his fingers along the edges of the wood. Heavy. "Leave it. Looks old. Leave it." He tapped one nail with his knuckle. The hollow sound echoed through the barn. "You boarded it yourself?" She straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead with her sleeve. "You ask too much." "I always did." Her voice sharpened. "And you never stopped." He rose to stand, turning toward her. The lantern light caught his face, shadows cutting deep around his eyes. Why keep something if it breaks you to hold it? She set the basket down hard. Why keep coming back if you're already gone? The words cracked through the air like a whip. He didn't answer right away. His hand hovered near the crate before falling back to his side. "What's inside?" he asked again, quieter this time. Her breathing thickened. She turned away, sweeping hay again, strokes sharp and fast. "Silence," she muttered. He studied her, then glanced once more at the crate. Silence doesn't last, nails don't hold forever. Her head jerked toward him, eyes flaring. "Don't touch it." He didn't. He stepped back, leaning against the wall near it, arms folded again. You afraid of what's in there or who knows it?" She gripped the rake until her knuckles ached. "I'm afraid of nothing." "Then open it." Her breath hitched. The rake slipped slightly in her grip. She forced it back down, dragged it across straw. "You think words can push me?" "I think truth already did." The silence that followed pressed heavier than the walls, thicker than the air. Dust motes hung suspended in the lantern glow, each one drifting like time itself had slowed. She whispered, voice trembling but low, "Some things stay shut for a reason." He nodded once. "And some rot if you keep them buried." She turned her back on him, dragging the rake with force. "Not everything needs your hand in it. Not everything needs yours either." Her body stilled. The rake slid from her grasp, bristles scratching across wood before settling still. She closed her eyes, chest rising sharp. "Why do you care?" she asked finally. "Because I've seen what men will use?" She spun, glaring at him. "Then you should have stayed gone." He didn't blink. "I tried." Her laugh was bitter, short. "You never try. You take." The crate sat between them, mute but heavy, like it was listening. He let his gaze fall back to it one last time before stepping away. "Whatever's in there," he said slowly, "it won't stay yours. It's mine as long as I say it is." "And when someone else says louder?" Her chest tightened, but she didn't answer. She bent, picked up the rake again, and swept hard, pushing hay against the walls as though covering something, anything, other than the truth nailed shut behind wood. He watched her a moment longer, then moved toward the door. The barn groaned with each step. He paused with his hand on the frame. "Silence is heavier than wood," he murmured. She didn't look up. "Then let it crush me." The door creaked as he stepped out, leaving her alone in the dim light. She kept sweeping, each motion sharper, faster, until the air filled with dust. The crate loomed in the corner, shadowed but alive, its presence thick enough to smother her breath. The silence stretched long, pressing against her chest, pressing against the walls, pressing until the barn itself felt ready to split. The morning was quiet until the whispers came. They weren't words carried on wind, but the kind of sounds a body knows. Boots dragging, breath too close, the hush of men waiting to be heard. She stepped out onto the porch with her broom in hand, eyes narrowing against the early light. The yard looked empty, too empty. Then she saw it. A rope swung slow from the tree near the fence line. Fresh knots, tight and deliberate, tied with a hand that meant something by it. The sight stopped her cold. Her jaw locked, lips pressed to a thin line. The broom slipped from her grip and landed with a thud against the porch rail. Behind her, the outlaw stepped out. He followed her gaze to the rope. His face didn't change. He walked forward, steady, each step heavy on dirt. She didn't move. She didn't speak. He reached the tree, pulled a knife from his belt, and with one clean swipe, cut the rope free. The knot fell slack, the loop landing in the dust. He carried it back, dropped it at her feet without ceremony. Her voice broke the silence, sharp as the knife he still held. "You brought this." He looked at her calm. "I stopped it." Her eyes burned, but she held her stance. "Don't you dare put that on me." "I didn't." "You think cutting it down makes it gone?" "It makes it useless." She glared at him, her chest rising fast. "It makes you a target." "I already was." Her hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to spit, to curse, to drive him off her porch and back into the dust he came from. But the rope lay there between them, coiled like a snake, daring her to look away. She bent, snatched it up, and held it tight. The fibers scratched her palm, rough and new. "They tied this for me," she hissed. "They tied it for me," he said. Her breath shook. "Don't you see? Both of us swing for this." He stepped closer, voice low. "Then they'll have to carry 2 bodies." She snapped her gaze to him. "And you're fine with that? I've been fine with worse." Her stomach twisted. She wanted to throw the rope at him, wanted to whip it across his face until he left. But she couldn't. The knot felt heavier than iron in her hand. She dropped it back into the dirt. He watched it fall, then looked at her again. "Don't let it own you." Her laugh came bitter, short. "Easy for you. You don't live here." "I don't run from here either." Her voice rose. "You run from everything else?" He didn't answer. His silence said enough. She turned away, pacing the porch, hands shaking against her apron. The image of the rope still swung in her head, steady as if it hadn't been cut. "You should have left last night," she said. "I couldn't." "You mean you wouldn't?" "Same thing." She spun back toward him. "You don't get to twist words like that." "I didn't twist anything." "You twisted my whole life." His face tightened, but he didn't flinch. "And you built yours without me." Her throat ached. She pressed a hand against her belly, as though steadying herself. "This house held me without you. Don't think it won't stand when you're gone again." He nodded once. "Then let it stand." Her eyes narrowed. "With a rope in the yard?" He glanced at the dirt where it lay. "Not anymore." Her breath caught again, then steadied into anger. "You think cutting it down means you saved me?" "No." "Then what?" "I think it means I chose." The words sat between them, heavy. She wanted to demand more, wanted to tear his meaning out of him, but she couldn't. The rope lay coiled in dust, silent proof of men watching in the night, of threats spoken without words. She turned, stormed into the house. He followed, but slower. She grabbed the stove poker, shoved kindling aside, then tossed the rope into the flames. Fire licked at fibers, smoke curling sharp into the air. She stood there, arms crossed, watching until it blackened. The outlaw leaned against the doorframe, eyes on the fire. "You burn signs, not the men who left them." She shot him a glare. "Then maybe you should leave before they come back." He shook his head. "Not leaving. Stubborn fool. Always." Her lips pressed tight. The rope hissed in the flames, curling inward until it collapsed into ash. She watched every thread burn down. She wanted to believe it meant something, but she knew better. The tree still stood. The knots still lingered in her mind. When the last ember faded, she turned to him, voice flat. "This doesn't end with ash." His eyes locked on hers. "No, it ends when they bleed or I do." She didn't thank him. She wouldn't. She stepped past him, into the morning light, the tree looming tall, its branches still swaying though the rope was gone. Her jaw stayed clenched, her breath sharp. The silence pressed down heavier than wood. The sound came first, boots pounding dirt, voices low but sharp, carrying across the yard. She froze where she stood, hand pressed to the table. The outlaw rose from his chair, slow, his eyes already hard. Then fists struck the door, shaking it on its hinges. "Open up!" a voice barked. She didn't move. The outlaw stepped forward, pulled the latch, and let the door swing wide. 4 men crowded the porch, the sheriff's mark stitched to their coats. Their eyes flicked past her, landed on him. "You know why we're here," the one in front said. The outlaw didn't answer. "You come with us. It ends clean," another added. "It never ends clean," the outlaw said. One of the men shoved past the threshold, shoulders wide, pushing her back. She stumbled, hand bracing against the table. "Don't," she hissed. "Stand aside," the man snapped. The outlaw's hand dropped to his belt. Wood cracked as another man shoved into the doorframe, rattling the hinges. Voices rose, shouts, orders, curses. She shouted too, but her words drowned in the clash. Then the first blow landed, the cabin filled with noise. Chairs scraped, boots slammed, fists collided. The outlaw swung hard, sending one man crashing into the wall. Another lunged, knocking dishes from the shelf. Glass shattered across the floor. She tried to push one back, her fists striking his arm, but he flung her aside. She caught herself on the stove, heat searing her palm. Her scream cut through the chaos. The outlaw roared, slamming the man's head into the table. Wood cracked beneath the force. Blood sprayed across the grain, dark and wet. The fight raged on, shoving, striking, grunts thick with rage. One of the sheriff's men went down, gasping. Another staggered, clutching his ribs. The last swung wild, caught the outlaw across the cheek. But the outlaw didn't fall. He slammed his fist into the man's jaw, dropping him cold. Then silence. The cabin heaved with breath. Bodies sprawled across the floor. The table stood in the center, stained red where blood had spilled. It pooled thick against the wood, creeping into the grooves where bread once lay, where meals had been shared. She stood shaking, her hand pressed to her burned palm, eyes locked on the stain. She whispered, voice breaking, "This house don't forgive." The outlaw wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, eyes dark. "Neither do I." Her knees weakened. She sank into a chair, staring at the table. The blood spread, glistening under lamplight. She couldn't look away. "They'll come back," she said hoarsely. "I know. Stronger. I'll be ready." She shook her head, tears brimming but not falling. This was my table. He glanced at it, then back at her. "Not anymore." Her throat tightened. "You took that from me. They tried first, and you finished it." He didn't argue. His silence weighed more than words. She rose, grabbed a rag, and pressed it against the stain. The fabric soaked fast, dark spreading across it until her hands shook. She dropped it, breathing sharp. "It won't come out. Some things shouldn't," he said. Her eyes snapped to him. "Easy for you. You don't have to eat here." "I do now." She flinched. "No, you won't stay." He stepped closer, voice low. "You want me gone? You should have let them take me." She stared, words caught in her throat. The rag lay crumpled in blood, dripping onto the floorboards. Her chest heaved. "I hate you." He nodded once. "Good. Hate keeps you sharp." She slammed her hand against the table, splattering blood further. "Don't turn this into lesson." "I didn't. You already did." Their eyes locked across the table, the stain a wall between them. Neither looked away. Finally she broke first, turning her face. She whispered, "This house don't forgive." "And neither do I," he repeated, steady, unflinching. The words sank into the walls, into the wood, into the silence left behind. The cabin carried them like scars, and the table bore the weight of blood that would never wash out. The cabin stayed quiet after the fight. Too quiet. The bodies had been dragged outside, left in the dirt where the sheriff would find them. But the house itself breathed different now. The walls felt tighter, the floor heavier under her feet. She couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, she rose from her bed and padded barefoot into the main room. The outlaw sat in the corner, hat pulled low, eyes open though he looked half asleep. He didn't speak when she crossed to the table. He just watched, silent as stone. Her hand brushed over the bloodstain still etched in the wood. She pressed her palm flat, then pulled it back as if the table had burned her. Her eyes fell to the floor beneath. Something inside her stirred. Memory, suspicion, maybe both. She crouched, fingers tracing along one board near the leg. It shifted under her touch, loose at the edge. She hooked her nails in, lifted slow. The board creaked. The sound splitting the silence of the cabin. The outlaw shifted in his chair but didn't move closer. She pried the board free and set it aside. Beneath lay dust, and in it a folded paper. She froze. Her breath hitched sharp. She reached down, pulled it out, and held it to the light. The paper was yellowed, edges brittle, but the writing across it was strong, sharp. A hand she knew too well. She unfolded it. The words struck like blows. The letter warned of betrayal. It spoke of men who would come in the night, of oaths broken, of debts paid in blood. It named a family crest, a mark she had seen before carved into rings, stamped into seals, branded into cattle, a name that still carried weight across the land. Her hand trembled as she held the page closer to the lantern light. She read each line twice, her stomach twisting tighter with every word. When she finally lowered the letter, the outlaw was standing. His jaw was set, eyes locked on the paper. "You knew," she said, voice raw. He didn't flinch. "I lived it." The words landed harder than the wood she'd pulled up. Her chest ached, her knees weak. She clutched the letter, fingers crumpling the edges. "You let me stand here blind. You wanted blind. I wanted peace." Same thing. Her voice cracked. "Don't twist this." His gaze held steady. "I'm not." She shook her head, stepping back, clutching the paper like a weapon. All this, every threat, every rope, every knock, it comes from them. "Yes, and you knew." "Yes." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked hard, refusing to let them fall. "You could have warned me." "I just did. Not now. Years ago." His silence burned. She slammed the letter against his chest. "You left me with nothing but silence." He didn't raise his hands to take it. He let it fall against him, then drop to the floor. "You don't know what I carried," he said. "Don't you dare," she snapped. "Don't stand here and act like your burden makes mine lighter." His eyes darkened. "I buried brothers. I buried friends. I buried myself. And I buried a name," she said, voice sharp, cutting. "Mine." The cabin walls held their words, heavy as the night. The letter lay crumpled between them, half in shadow. She stepped back, pressing her hand against her belly, grounding herself. "So it's true. They won't stop. No. They'll come until—" Her voice faltered. "Until nothing's left." Her chest rose, fell, rose again. She looked at him, hate and fear tangled tight. "And you brought it here. I followed it here. You think that makes it better?" "No." Her hand trembled against her side. "Then why come?" His voice dropped low. "Because if I didn't, you'd be gone already." Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to throw the lantern, to rip the letter to pieces. Instead, she sank into the chair, eyes locked on the page where it lay on the floor. The crest stared back at her, bold and unbroken. She whispered, almost to herself, "This house don't forgive." He crouched, picked the letter up, folded it slow. His hands were steady, too steady. He placed it on the table beside the bloodstain. "Neither do I." Her breath hitched. She turned away, eyes burning, the weight of the letter pressing against her, even though it no longer touched her skin. The outlaw stood, shoulders squared, as though ready for the door to break again at any moment. The night stretched long. The fire in the stove cracked once, then settled back into silence. The letter sat on the table, silent, but louder than any voice, its words echoing in the space between them. She woke to the smell first. Sharp, biting, heavy with oil. Not wood smoke, something darker. She sat up quick, heart pounding. The outlaw was already at the window, eyes narrowed, hand on his gun. Then came the scrape of boots, the hiss of liquid poured too fast. She stumbled to the door, flung it open. Lantern light caught the scene. Men crouched low, cans tipped, gasoline soaking the porch boards, spilling down the steps into the dirt. One struck a match, flame flaring bright against the dark. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. The match dropped. Fire leapt, racing along the wet boards, orange tongues licking high, curling fast toward the door. Heat hit her face. She stumbled back. The outlaw shoved past her, eyes fierce. "Stay back." But she didn't. She stood in the doorway, frozen, watching flames climb. Then thunder split the sky. Rain came sudden, slamming down in sheets, heavy, violent, unnatural. The fire hissed, spat, clawed at the boards, but couldn't live against the storm. Smoke rose, black and wet, swirling into the night. She staggered onto the porch, water drenching her hair, her dress clinging heavy. Her eyes locked on the dying flames. The outlaw stood beside her, soaked through, rain dripping off his hat brim. "They want you gone," he said, voice steady over the storm. She spat back without hesitation. "They always did." Lightning cracked above, blinding white. For a breath, the land lit up raw. Trees stretched like skeletons. Fence lines jagged, mud shining. It felt like the earth itself had turned its gaze on them. She stared at the blackened boards, smoke rising, rain pounding harder. "They'll keep trying," he nodded. "Yes. They'll burn the walls, burn the roof, burn us inside, unless we stop them first." Her chest tightened. She turned on him, eyes wild. "Stop them. You couldn't stop leaving. You couldn't stop silence. And now you think you'll stop them." His jaw tightened. "I stayed this time." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Her laugh cut bitter through the storm. "That's the same lie you told before." "It's the only truth I've got." She stepped closer, rain dripping down her face, eyes locked on his. "You think standing here makes you different than them? You bring fire same as they do." He didn't flinch. "Difference is I don't walk away after." She clenched her fists. "You left me with their ashes. And you're still here." Her voice cracked. "Because I had no choice." His silence pressed, harder than thunder. Rain hammered the boards, washing soot into streams, leaving the porch scarred but standing. She looked up at the sky, lightning flaring again. For an instant, she thought she saw shapes in the clouds, faces, eyes, watching. The storm felt alive, answering violence with violence. Her voice dropped low, shaking. "This land don't want us. It wants blood," he said. Her breath caught. "Then it already has it." "Not enough." Her stomach turned. She pressed a hand against her belly, steadying herself. "Don't you dare talk like that." He met her eyes, voice steady. "I don't have to. They will." She stepped back, shaking her head. "You think this is about me? It's not. It's about you. It always was. It's about what follows me," he said, "and it's here now." The rain poured harder, slamming the porch like fists. The fire hissed one last time, then died completely, leaving smoke curling faint into the storm. She wrapped her arms tight around herself, soaked through, trembling but not from cold. "This house don't forgive," she whispered. "Neither do I," he answered again, same as before. Her throat burned. She wanted to scream, to shove him back into the rain, but the storm roared too loud. She turned instead, stepping inside, dripping water onto the floorboards. He followed, slow, closing the door against the night. The cabin smelled of smoke and wet gasoline. The stain on the table lingered. The letter on the wood still folded. Fire hadn't touched them, but it might, yet. She leaned against the wall, breath shaking. Next time rain won't save us. He tipped his head. Then we save ourselves. She looked at him, eyes sharp. Or we burn. His silence said he didn't disagree. Lightning cracked again, closer this time. The land was listening, and it didn't care. The lantern swung in his hand, light spilling across the yard in narrow arcs. The night was still, air damp from the storm that had smothered the fire. Mud clung heavy to their boots as they walked toward the well. She carried the shovel, grip tight. Knuckles raw from work already done and more still waiting. The outlaw dragged the wrapped body behind them, canvas streaked dark with blood. They stopped near the well, where the ground softened easy. She set the shovel into dirt and pressed her weight down. The blade sank with a dull thud. She lifted, dumped, pressed again. The outlaw tied the lantern to the well's post, letting its light spill over them. The flame flickered against the rope marks, still scarred into the wood. She worked without looking at him. Her breath came harsh, every thrust of the shovel rattling through her arms. Dirt piled higher beside the hole, dark and wet. He stepped in after a while, scooping with his hands, making the pit deeper. Neither spoke. Finally she straightened, hair stuck to her face, sweat and rainwater running together. She gripped the shovel hard, voice low but cutting. "You leave tomorrow." He didn't stop digging. "You want me gone?" Her jaw clenched. She didn't answer. She shoved the shovel back into the earth, harder this time. "You want me gone," he said again. Her breath caught. She kept digging, forcing the shovel down, dirt flying up. "I want this finished." "This won't finish," he said. She snapped her eyes to him. "Then at least get out of my house." He stared back. Face shadowed by lantern glow. "It was never your house alone." Her grip faltered. The words cut deeper than the shovel ever could. She turned away, throat tight, arms shaking. The hole was wide enough now. They stopped. The outlaw hauled the canvas-wrapped body over, lowered it in slow. The weight landed heavy at the bottom, dirt sliding around it. She pressed her hand against her belly, steadying herself as she looked down. No prayers came, no words, just silence. She whispered almost to herself, "This land don't forgive." He crouched, reached into his coat, and pulled something from his pocket. A badge, sheriff's steel, polished though scuffed at the edges. He stared at it for a long moment, then dropped it into the hole. It landed on the canvas with a hollow clink. He grabbed a handful of dirt and tossed it over. "Neither do I," he murmured. Her chest tightened. She lifted the shovel again, scooped, and dumped. The outlaw joined her. Together they covered the body layer after layer until canvas disappeared, until badge disappeared, until nothing but earth stared back. When it was done, she dropped the shovel, palms blistered raw. She fell to her knees beside the mound, pressing her hands into the dirt like she could force it to keep its secrets. Her breath shuddered out. "This house can't hold you. This land won't either." He stood above her, silent. Rain dripped from branches overhead, landing soft against fresh soil. "You leave tomorrow," she said again, voice steady this time. He crouched beside her, eyes fixed on the mound. "And if I don't?" She turned her head, meeting his gaze. Then we both hang. He leaned back on his heels, studying her. Maybe that's all we've got left. Her throat burned. She shook her head, pushing to her feet. No, I've got more. She pressed her hand firm against her belly. I've got more. He stood too, shoulders squared. Then I'll see it through. Her voice hardened. Not here. The silence thickened, pressing down on them as heavy as the dirt beneath their boots. He didn't argue. He didn't promise. He just bent, scooped the lusness of the loose earth, and pressed it flat with his palm. The grave settled, quiet and final. The lantern flame flickered, casting shadows long across the yard. The well stood beside them, black mouth open, silent witness. She pulled the shovel upright, planted it into the ground like a marker, then stepped back. "Tomorrow," she said, turning toward the cabin. He watched her walk, eyes lingering on the shovel, the grave, the well. His hand brushed his pocket out of habit, but the badge wasn't there anymore. It lay buried in the dirt, sealed with the body, erased like it had never existed. The outlaw followed her back to the porch, boots dragging mud across wood. He didn't speak. She didn't look back. The grave beside the well stayed silent, but the weight of it followed them into the house, heavier than any rope, heavier than any fire. The knock didn't come this time. Just the sound of boots on the porch, heavy and deliberate. She stood near the table, rag clenched in her hand, breath sharp. The outlaw moved to the door, but before he touched the latch, it creaked open on its own. The sheriff stepped inside, alone, rope coiled in one hand, Bible tucked under his arm. His eyes swept the room slow, landing first on her belly, then sliding to the outlaw standing tall in the lamplight. "That child ain't yours to keep," he said. Her breath caught. The rag dropped to the floor. The outlaw stepped forward, jaw tight, voice low. "Then whose?" "Not yours," the sheriff said flat. His gaze flicked between them, cold and certain. "Never was, never will be." She straightened, chin high, though her heart hammered. "You don't get to say that." "I already said it," the sheriff answered. "And I'll say it again when the rope's around your neck." The outlaw's hand brushed his belt, but he didn't draw. His eyes locked on the sheriff's. "You came alone." "I don't need men for this," the sheriff said. "Then you'll fall alone," the outlaw muttered. The sheriff's mouth tightened. He lifted the rope, let it swing from his fist, loop hanging loose. "You know what this means." She stepped forward now, past the outlaw, her hand trembling but steadying as she lifted it. Firelight from the stove caught on metal. A ring glinted sharp against her skin. Her voice cut through the room. "Then neither is your silence." The sheriff froze. His eyes dropped to the ring, recognition flickering, his jaw flexed, throat working. The outlaw stood still, watching, waiting. The silence dragged, heavier than the rope itself. The sheriff's hand twitched once, then lowered. The rope sagged, hanging dead at his side. "You don't know what you've done," he said. Her hand didn't waver. "I know enough." The outlaw stepped closer, standing beside her now. His voice was steady, calm. "It ends here." The sheriff looked at them both, eyes narrowing. The fire popped in the stove, sparks flaring against the iron. The rope swung once more, then stilled. Finally the sheriff turned. "This land don't forgive." "Neither do we," the outlaw said. The sheriff's shoulders stiffened, but he didn't answer. He stepped back, boots heavy on the porch. Then the door closed behind him, leaving the cabin in silence again. Her hand lowered slow, the ring still gleaming in the firelight. She exhaled sharp, shoulders sagging. The outlaw reached for her wrist, steadying it, but she pulled away. "You see what he saw," she whispered. He nodded once. "I saw it long before he did." She pressed her palm against her belly, breathing ragged. The ring burned on her finger, weight heavier than gold. She stared at it, then at the outlaw. Words stuck in her throat. The fire crackled. The rope no longer hung in the air. The cabin stood scarred, boards blackened from smoke, table still stained with blood, floor marked with ash. But it stood. For the first time in too long, the night didn't feel borrowed. It felt theirs. She whispered into the quiet, "This house don't forgive." His eyes stayed on hers. "Then we don't need it to." The fire burned steady, shadows dancing against walls that had held too much. Outside, the land was still listening, but for once it had nothing left to take. The fire burned steady, shadows dancing against walls that had held too much. Outside, the land was still listening, but for once it had nothing left to take. The door's echo lingered longer than it should have. She kept staring at it, as if the sheriff still stood there. Her hand trembled once, then steadied against the wood. The outlaw didn't move. His eyes stayed on her face, not the door, not the ring, just her. Finally, she spoke. "He'll come back." "Yes." "Not alone." "No." She turned, her skirt brushing the bloodstain in the floorboards. Her gaze dropped to the table. The stain had spread wider than before, a dark blot that claimed the wood like a scar. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "This table don't forgive either." The outlaw's jaw tightened. "Then it remembers." She pressed her palm flat against it. Heat rose faint from the wood, though there was no reason for it. She pulled her hand back fast. "It remembers too much." The outlaw stepped closer, his boots heavy against the boards. "So do you." Her eyes flashed. "Don't you put that on me." "I'm not." "You sit there like you've carried more. Maybe you have. But this house—" Her voice broke. She steadied it with force. "This house never chose." He said nothing. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't empty realness. It was weighted, like rope coiled in the rafters. Waiting. She reached for a rag, dropped it in the basin, wrung it out, then pressed it against the table. The stain bled through. Dark red spread, swallowing the cloth like it had swallowed her hands before. She dropped it, breathing sharp. "It won't wash out." The outlaw laid his palm against the stain, flat, steady. "Then we leave it." Her breath caught. Leave it? For them to see. For them to fear. She stared at him, rage twisting inside her. "You think this is about fear? About who stares longer? You don't live with the echoes. I do. Every night, every silence, every creak. I live with it too." His voice was low, sharp. "Don't tell me I don't." Her throat tightened. She turned away, gripping the counter until her knuckles whitened. "You left me once with nothing but echoes. And you're still here." "Because I had to be." He stepped closer, his voice softer now. "So do I." Her eyes closed. She wanted to shove him away, to scream at him until the house itself cracked. But the storm outside had stolen all the noise. What was left was only breath, only silence, only the steady burn of the fire that refused to die. The ring gleamed faint on her finger. She twisted it, pulled it half off, then pushed it back on. "It don't belong to me." "It does now." Her lips pressed tight. "You say that like it makes it true." "It does." The words struck her chest harder than rope. She sat down sudden, her body heavy, her breath uneven. The outlaw watched her, but didn't move. He waited, as though silence itself was a test. Finally, she spoke again. "There's a grave by the well. There'll be more." He nodded. "You ready for that?" "I already dug them." Her eyes burned. She shook her head, voice breaking. "I'm tired of dirt, tired of blood in wood, tired of silence in walls. I don't want more graves." He crouched beside her chair, eyes steady. "Then we make this the last one?" Her gaze snapped to him. "You think you can end it?" "I think I can stay." She stared, lips trembling, then spat. "You never did before. I'm doing it now." The words were blunt, stripped bare. She hated how they landed, hated how they almost sounded like truth. She turned her face away, but the ring still gleamed in the firelight, undeniable. The outlaw stood again, moved to the window. Rain still slid down the glass, dripping into the mud outside. The well's silhouette stood black against the night, the fresh mound of earth beside it, raw and unmarked. He pressed his palm against the pane, as though testing whether the land itself would answer back. Behind him, she rose, slow. Her hand brushed the table once more, then the rag, then the ring. She whispered into the room, "This house don't forgive." He answered without turning, "It don't need to." Her breath shook, but steadied. She moved beside him, shoulder close but not touching. Together they looked out at the yard. The rope was gone. The grave was fresh. The land slick with rain. But something else hung there, heavier than storm or silence. A reckoning, waiting. She pressed her palm against her belly. The child kicked, sudden and strong. She winced, but her lips tightened into something near resolve. "Then let them come," she whispered. The outlaw's reflection in the glass shifted. His jaw tightened. His hand slid down from the pane, back to his side. He nodded once. "They will." The silence stretched, longer than the night. The fire burned low, the ring gleamed, the stain held, the house stood. Not forgiven, not cleansed, but claimed. And that was enough.